G'day Flosstube, Anna aka Moranalis, back with another stitching update. It is April 23rd, I think. I did just look at that before I started this video, but you know, brain like a goldfish. It is cold, wet, miserable here in the tropics, and by that I looked at the thermometer on my way by in front of the house. It's still 80 degrees Fahrenheit, but I had my sweater on earlier, although the sun's come out now, so that'll actually give us a little bit of warmth. Yes, winter is coming. Keep in mind, I'm still wearing a tank top, shorts, and barefoot, but you know, winter's coming. Anyway, life's hard in the tropics. Before we get started, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everybody who left comments and welcome backs and all that on the last video. I do appreciate every one of you. I love hearing from you guys. Things are nice and stable and where they're supposed to be, and you know, we're on a good run at the moment. So, and we have been for a while. So that is excellent. Yeah, beyond that, let's get into what I've been doing. I have several whips. I have a new start. Bit of a story around that one. And I think that's it. There's no finishes. If you're new here, you'll rarely see finishes because my projects tend to be pretty massive. But there's some whips you haven't seen in a while. And some good progress. So, we'll just start at the top of the pile because that's where we're at. So I have if you've been around a while, you know I've done mermaids for one of the nieces, did a mermaid for my daughter. We've decided all the cousins need mermaids. So this is Macca's mermaid. It's a Fillipina. I don't even try and say its proper name. It's just the maiden in this house, or Macca's mermaid. And I should really take these out of the package, but you know, there you go. You can see her without the glare a bit there. So as per when I did the Pearl of the Orient Seas, I will change this to the Korean skin tones to match the little girl that it's going to. And I didn't bring my board. It is what it is. This is how far I've gotten, which should be mostly what you saw before. It's only had a day or two's worth of progress. I know I was working yesterday down in the tail. Down here, I was actually making reasonably good progress, feeling really proud of myself. And then I realized I was about 5 stitches off in a big old hunk of the tail, and it was totally going to deform the thing. And so then I spent the next half an hour ripping all that out and then put it away. Because, you know, when they misbehave like that, that's what happens. You put them in the naughty corner. So there is not that much amazing. I will try and find a before photo. Presumably, yeah, I don't know. I will try. Hopefully, as we have a bit more regular videos, I will be able to find more reliable before photos. So, yeah, I don't want this one to stall too long because it is a gift. And the little girl in question is getting older every day. And although my daughter's 17 and she still thought mermaids were cool, but I wouldn't want her to grow out of the mermaid phase before she gets a mermaid. Having said that, we've also learned we have another cousin coming on the other side. Not even born yet, so I got a bit of time. But we'll have to find another mermaid for her eventually. Yeah, so the other, I'll leave that one till last. I was also working on Tinktorium by Chatelaine, and I'll have to insert a pictures of what they're going to look like. Doesn't actually look that good, but that's where it's at. You can see I have completed the outer, just 2 stitches wide border all the way around. There is this will get filled in with specialty stitches, so I'm hoping they will show a little bit better. That filigree, I don't know what you call that. That fancier border is not yet finished all the way around, but it'll be hard to see in the pictures anyway. Actually, I was thinking it was time to do a close-up of this. Maybe I'll try and film that and insert it. So if you see it, I did. Yeah, so things I know I worked on. I finished some of the cross stitch on several of these corners. There's still a whack of specialty stitches to go in there. You can see I've started adding lanterns and some of the little herbs in there. Focused in filling in this middle bit. So those are predominantly backstitch or fractional stitches for those hanging herbs, and I think they're done on both sides. The colors, I can see why people sometimes do this on the black. The colors are not very strong on the lighter background. You can see them in person, but they're not really showing up in the camera very well. I was taken a little bit by surprise to discover the center motifs are all 1/1. I had it in my head that I was all done with 1/1 on this piece and was quite happy about that. But no, these center bits are 1/1. So this one has been done, but the other 3 centers, I haven't done anything on the left, right, or bottom sides yet. So it's just the top section that it's been done. You can see mostly complete corner and some baskets. Oh, that one's got more herbs. I think the baskets are barrels, I think she actually called them. No, they're not quite complete all the way around. Only the top 2 corners are they relatively complete. So this actually got a fair bit of time because we found ourselves in 7 days COVID isolation. And so this one suffered a bit in its work time because it was the one I was working on when I was actually having symptoms and just dog tired and runny nose and scratchy eyes, and it makes it hard to stitch under those conditions. So having said that, I did manage 1/1 in the middle of all that. So, hello, that's not too bad. But after 3 days of working on this through COVID isolation, with a 7-day total to go, so 4 more days to go, 7 days total, I decided I needed to swap away from that to something a little bit easier. I had planned on taking that mermaid with me so that, it could get some work. But in the chaos of the COVID isolation, my mermaid was with my daughter who wasn't isolating with us, and therefore I couldn't stitch on it. The only other project I had with me was my new start. So some of you will know that last time I filmed a video, Bellatrix, I said she was all kitted up and ready to go, just waiting for an excuse to start. And so, yes, I figured stuck on the farm with nowhere to go and nothing to do would be a good time to start her. So, you guys, I was so out of practice with this. The mermaid is on the 28 count. They're both 28 count cashel. The mermaid and Tinktorium. They're both dyed by myself. That goes with Bellatrix too. 28 count cashel, dyed by myself. We'll get back in the swing of this, I promise. So, unlike most starts, this one got a whole heap of progress. Doo-doo! That is a little bit more than just the 4 days of isolation. But of course, it got most of that progress while we were in isolation. And then once we were able to go out and do things, I worked on it for another week. But obviously nothing like the same hours. So that is a heck of a start, I reckon. Not too bad at all. Yeah, I really love the purples and stuff in that. They just look absolutely gorgeous. Of course, COVID brain not functioning all that well. I read one of the symbols wrong in that darkest purple that goes up against the black. I mistook the symbol for one of the dark grays. I think it's the dark gray that's around there in the cat. And it didn't twig because it's right next to the black. So I figured it was part of the shadowing off the black. I had to rip out about 3 threads worth of dark gray and replace it with dark purple. I was not amused that day either. This one would have ended up in timeout, except that the only other option was the Chatelaine. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that happened at the end of the day. So by the time, you have a sleep and you wake up again, I'd forgiven it enough to keep going. But, oh, that was a rough day. So, yeah, starting to get a little bit of the metallics in there. I know I said this one was fully kitted up and ready to go, which would have been perfect, being in isolation and not supposed to go anywhere. Apparently it turns out that I do a really lousy job of kitting things up in advance. Or more accurately, I kit it up assuming I will have my access to my full stash to just grab the final bits and pieces. And that doesn't work when you're stuck in isolation away from home. So you can see how much black is on this. I think the pattern calls for like 4 skeins of black. Guess what? I have black on a big spool because I buy so many freaking skeins of black. I just bought the spool. I put a little bobbin labeled 310 in the thing of floss, but it had no actual 310 on it because the spool would have been in the house or something away from where I was kitting it. And I thought, oh, I'll just do that later. I'll do that when I start it. So I had no 310 to start it with. I actually ended up rating the 310 out of Tinktorium. Fortunately, 310 is a very common color, and we have plenty of it to go around, but still, I was a bit perturbed. I also can't read the list of flosses very well because there was a brown in the book, I think. One of those browns I was missing altogether. I ended up, after we got out of isolation, running the Spotlight to get a few extra things. And these purples, which of course there's acres and acres of purple. Again, I'd thrown in a bobbin that was probably only had 1/3 of a skein left on it, figuring, oh, well, that's enough to start it on the day I want to start it. But that's not really enough for 4 days worth of massive stitching on a piece. That's a lot of those purples will call for 2 full skeins. It doesn't get you very far when you've only got 1/3. So, yes, post-isolation, there was a very quick run to Spotlight. So, that was the new start. When we got home from our trip, I continued working on Bellatrix for a little bit, but it got to the point where by that time I'd worked on her for 4 days of isolation plus an entire week. I was finally back with all my supplies and whatnot, and it's like, I'm done. I gotta find something else. But we'd also been on the red-eye flight from Perth. We'd been over in Perth. And coming off a red-eye flight, you're sleep deprived and miserable, and the brain doesn't function. It's not exactly Chatelaine stitching conditions. No brain cells should be required. So I was on virtual, trying to debate what I should stitch, and too lazy to go to the house to get some things, and I ended up pulling out a piece we haven't seen in a while. This is Aura of Autumn by Artecy. And I am currently working only on this panel. Last you saw it, I'd finished the park bench, gotten to the top of it. So I must be over here in this blue cluster. I will eventually do these 2 panels, but park bench is all we're working on at the moment. Because I've now got Pattern Keeper, I went through the process of loading this chart into Pattern Keeper, so I'm not actually using the paper book anymore. I should actually clear it out and just put the picture, same with the map one, put the picture in a binder of just pictures and get rid of the chart papers. So the backstory to this one, I think this whip is about 3 years old from memory. It essentially just reminds me of a night that my husband and I were walking around in Paris. And so I started it about 3 years ago for our wedding anniversary, which by a fluke is next week. So it seemed an appropriate time with no brain cells to pull this one out. Because unlike the world map, it hasn't got this anything like the same confetti and thinking required and whatnot. So we pulled that one out. And unfortunately it's in the Q-snap, so you don't get a nice big picture, but I will try and insert a big picture of where it was last it was out of the Q-snap if I can find one. And that is where we were up to. Now, those of you who have seen me stitching on this one before might remember that when I was working off the paper, I was basically going up a column, down a column, up, you know, to kind of zigzag, but sticking to strict columns. Even though there's not a heap of confetti in here, I was basically just trying to prevent having a whole page full of ninja stitches that needed to be tidied up. And so I'd pick whatever color was at the bottom, work up the column, park it over there. When I got to the top of the column, I do the same and just park it in the next. And I just zigzag my way back and forth and Bob's your uncle. Well, now that it's on Pattern Keeper, I started doing that. I'm like, this is really stupid. Because particularly with this blue, you can see it just kind of keeps going over there. And I'm like, why am I parking? And the park threads are annoying me. So in the end, like I cut off about there, but I sewed in all the park threads that were along the bottom. And I actually switched to kind of working more on a diagonal. Like, to be fair, all I'm using the diagonal for is trying to finish all of a diagonal before I move into the next for picking my starting colors. There's a few spots, I don't know, the current diagonal I'm working on must run about there, so I've almost finished filling that in. But there's a few colors up here where it's like one of these blues would have like 2 stitches in my focus diagonal, and then I'd stitch all the way up here, and then there'd be 2 stitches somewhere else, and then I'd stitch up. You know, so I think in the end I put like 3 threads worth of the blue in to cover. Like if you truly stuck to that diagonal, you wouldn't have even needed a thread to fill in just that color within the diagonal. So it's more of a focus. Again, just trying not to make sure you aren't missing random little ninja stitches that need to be filled in at the end of a page. Before I forget, this is a 25 count. You can see it's got a bit of a printed coloring on it. Unlike the others linens, this is an even weave. I thought I wrote down the actual... I must have wrote it on the stocking pattern. I go through this every time I try and tell you what it is. I don't know. It's a 25 count even weave. But I did quite like that modeling. But with the full coverage, you're never going to see that modeling. So it was essentially just a cheap even weave. I think because the anniversary is coming up at the end of next week, I will probably keep this one out and try and continue to make progress. At this point, we're about halfway through that, a little bit more than halfway through that first panel. Only taken 3 years, so each panel being 6 years, we have an 18-year schedule in front of us. Good thing I'm not too terribly rushed in a hurry to get it done. But it is good to see it getting some progress, and I should probably pull it out a little bit more often. So the only other one I worked on, this must have been before we went to Perth, because I certainly was not going to drag this bugger to Perth. In fact, I got clips I got threads hanging everywhere on this one. This one's an absolute mess. As you can all guess, it's probably the world map. I will have to insert a picture of what this one will look like when it's done. And last time you saw it, there was like a really tiny bit in the corner that you couldn't hardly see. So now you can see there's a much more substantial bit in the corner to see. There's about a page and a half in that corner now. With this one, I am still working strictly 10 by 10 blocks, although not strictly. I've definitely relaxed. I will go into the neighboring blocks a lot more now that I've got Pattern Keeper, but the focus is still strictly finish up the 10 by 10, move to the next 10 by 10, move to the next 10 by 10, and my 10 by 10s run on a diagonal and zigzag back and forth until I finish the page. So finished this page, and then I was kind of debating, I don't know if you can even see, so there, that is just the top of King Tut's head, and I'm like, oh, something, you know, to see besides just big old arch. Should I go down and get more King Tut, or should I go over here? And I don't think there was anything particularly interesting over here. It was just, you know, background globe and the basket of this hot air balloon that you can see up here. It's about the only thing, and the rest of it's just background globe color. And now I tended to always do the top and then run down the bottom, but I was so tempted to go down the bottom. Obviously I didn't. I went to do that background globe, and in the end I'm actually really pleased I did, because this is such easier stitching. It's been much faster to get that piece done, with the exception of that dumb basket, which has like freaking 100 colors in a 10 by 10 block. No. Well, there were a few replicates. I might be exaggerating slightly, but it was pretty stinking close. I did a lot of cheating in that basket, to be honest. I'm sorry if there's two colors side by side that only show up once. I'm only pulling one thread for that. Yeah, so even as it is, that basket is so beyond thick, it's not funny. Yeah. I don't know, like, I look at some of the other massive projects, like the Amy Stewart bookshelves, and they're gorgeous. There's several of those that I could probably be talked into starting. The whole idea of tackling, you know, that in sort of a supersized max color, though, you know, with the confetti that would entail, and the, you know, the same massive size of this map, I'm not convinced I want to do that stuff twice. As it is, it's taken me 2 years. I have finally hit the 10% mark, so I am officially ahead of schedule. I went back digging through my old videos. I started this, near as I can tell, roughly July 2020. So I am 2 and a bit months ahead of my 20-year schedule, and at 10% already. So, like, that's awesome, but I don't need a heap of 20-year projects. This one will do me just fine. Out of curiosity, I went and did the math to figure out how many stitches per day I'd have to do to finish it in 20 years. It's only 95 stitches. You'd think I should be able to finish faster, but this one does go months without attention, and it's hard to make up 95 stitches a day times however many months in the remaining months. So I am hoping to at least finish this next page. The problem is, once I pick this up, I won't pick it up until after I've done what I want on the Aura of Autumn. I don't need 2 full coverages being worked on at the same time. But once I do pick this up, I'd like to finish that page, and then no doubt I will be tempted to go back and see more of that King Tut icon appear. But it's a really nice break to be in that easier stitching area. I don't know how you guys all handle this massive extra fabric. I found when I finished the first bunch and had to move, all the fabric that's back here had stains from where it was rubbing on my leg and stuff, so I went and found a crappy old pillowcase, looks absolutely dreadful. I swear it went through the wash before I put it on here. And tucked it into the Q-snap, and you know, so that now I've got all this extra rubbish hanging around, but at least this bit of fabric that was well exposed and getting stained from where it rested on my leg and stuff is now a bit more protected, I hope. I did wash it when I moved the Q-snap to try and lighten or remove would be the ideal. The stains that were developing after the first bit, it didn't remove them entirely. I didn't stress about it too much because a lot of it's in the middle of the fabric and you're going to get covered up with stitching anyway. But, you know, obviously I don't want that sort of rubbish to appear on the borders where it is going to be visible. So hopefully that'll protect it some. Okay, so that is all the stitching that I've worked on for the last month-ish since I last saw you. I did have a little bit of stash arrive, and I'm actually waiting on several more bits of stash to arrive. So next video should be good too in that regard. But focusing on what we had, because we were in Perth. I think I said we were in Perth. That's where we were. There is a local needlework store there called Stitcher's Corner. Ironically, I used to live about 20 minutes walk from Stitcher's Corner. Could have gone there every day if I wanted to, but of course at that period in my life I wasn't stitching. That was when I was doing far more of the scrapbooking and stuff. Figures. Anyway, haven't been to Stitcher's Corner in absolutely years. But decided that can't be in town and not pop in. So I did. I went and had a bit of a browse. Tried not to go too overboard, which I succeeded. They had a lot more of the specialty threads and stuff than I remembered. Certainly wasn't anything like what you would see at Stitchville, which is the needlework store I go to when I'm back in the States in Minneapolis. But a reasonable selection. They had some of the basic treasure braid colors. I don't think they had the Glorianas and the water lilies that would have been what I was interested in, but they did have some of the other fancy cottons. Anyway, there was more there than I had remembered / expected. It would have been good if, I was at a point where I had a piece I was trying to convert, a good resource to go have a look at actual colors rather than try and do things on the internet. So yeah, it was good to have a squiz. They've always got lots of Mirabilias. So that's the area I went to scope out, see what was available there. And in the end, I picked up this mermaid, Bluebeard's Princess, MD98. So no plans to start her in the immediate future. She will go in the someday bucket, maybe pull her out for a mania or something like that. I actually have the Gypsy Mermaid kitted, which will probably get started before this one. As for the whole mermaid cousins thing, I think because we've done 3 Bellas, we'll probably stick to the mermaid cousins all being Bella mermaids. But one day I would like to get a chance to get some of these other mermaids into the equation. So that's all I picked up at Stitcher's Corner, but I did have a nice squiz around and got rid of the husband and the kids for enough time to actually enjoy just having a look and a dream and a think, which is in itself, getting rid of the kids and whatnot, half the battle sometimes. The other bit of stash that arrived, like pre everything going pear-shaped, I had signed up for Under the Sea Fabric of the Month Club. And I did that, I don't know, late last year, some point. And when I signed up, I'd worked it out with Leslie. that she was going to basically stockpile 3 months worth of fabrics and send them all in a hit so that, you know, try and keep the shipping rates under control. So I signed up knowing full well that there would be a delay in the shipping and all the rest of it while we, you know, stockpiled that. All well and good. Before the first shipment could come out, freaking Australia and US Post decided they weren't going to play nice to each other anymore. And so I've just been accumulating fabric at some place at Leslie's place that she hasn't been able to send me until just recently. So I finally got a shipping notice that everything gone out, and I got a massive pack of fabric all in one hit. And so that literally showed up last night. I've been watching the mailbox like a hawk because I knew this was coming. I think it's wet, rainy, miserable. I did not want fabric left out in our cruddy mailbox getting wet, you know, not when it's hand dyed, not color fast, all the rest of that. Although, to be honest, it comes in a plastic bag. Each one of the fabrics is in a plastic bag. It probably would have been all right, but I wanted my fabric, so I was watching the mailbox like a hawk. The bulk of these are 32 count linens. I get the fat half from the looks of it. See, I don't even remember. Yeah, and so I think there is 128 because there was one at one point that she decided or was having trouble getting the 32s. So there is 128 on here. I kind of go back and forth between the 28 and the 32. I like the Bellas on the 28 because they're so bead heavy. The Chatelaines got to go on the 28 because they are so bead heavy. I did do one Bella on the 32. The Pearl of the Orient Seas was on the 32. And the beads were nightmare. But I did it. It just required a lot of putzing and pain in the butt. And to be honest, a lot of the beads ended up kind of getting attached over the top of thread stitches that I'd done. So just to kind of try and make motifs fit. Anyway, beads are a whole nother conversation. I did have somebody asked if I'd go through the process of how I go do those conversions. I will do that. I think not this video. I will try and put together a little segment, and whether I tack it onto the next video or just upload just the segment separately, but I will try and do that so you can walk you through my process. Probably do both the metallics and the beads. To be honest, a lot of it's just winging it, but I'll show you my logic in winging it for whatever it's worth, if anybody gets any value out of it. But that was a total squirrel. We were talking about fabric that arrived. So I'm just going to show you. I'm not going to take them out of the packs. Sorry, I hate breaking up these packs. I like them stored in their nice clean packs so I could see what they are. So I'm not going to take them out entirely. This is a perfect mermaid color called Neptune. And this is one of the 32s. And it's coming up fairly accurate color, I think. So well usable color, that one. This is another 32 called Hestia. It's oranges and browns. It's probably great for various Halloween pieces. Like, you know, doing that Jack trick or treat would have been good on this sort of color scheme. This is another 32 called Valkyrie. It's looking a bit more purple in the camera. Again, it's a fairly generic sort of sky blue that would be useful for a lot of projects. Definitely a mermaid would be a potential on one of those. This is another 32 called Luna, a beautiful dark purple. Oh, could you imagine a Halloween witch or something like that on this background? Or possibly Bellatrix if I hadn't started her, depending on how it goes with the red or blue purples. But, I mean, too late for that one. But, you know, that would totally make an awesome Halloween sort of piece. Ceres, C-E-R-E-S. This is the 28 count. So this is another, you know, perfect for Halloween, sort of, with the black splotches and the browns. Yeah, I think that has a lot of potential for some of those pieces. So looking forward to finding something to put that on there. This one I actually thought might be really good for, I think I said I kitted up Gypsy Mermaid. Now when I originally kitted up Gypsy Mermaid, actually before we get distracted, this is back to a 32 count, and it's E-U-D-O-R-E. Eudore? We're going with that. When I originally kitted up Gypsy Mermaid, I bought 2 pieces of fabric from Leslie, and one of them was intended to be that really sort of limey green. This is vibrant, but it's not as neon as it's showing in the camera. One of them was intended to be that same sort of limey green, just as kind of an off-the-wall sort of would that work option. But the fabric that I got was much more blue-green and less limey. And so I just discounted that and put it on the other fabric that or kitted it with the other fabric that I had ordered. I haven't actually started that piece yet. So I think I'm definitely going to put this one aside and do a floss toss on this slimy sort of green before I commit to doing it on the other one that I purchased, which I think from memory is a purple. So maybe I should do a floss toss against this one. I think the one that I actually have kitted with it is purple, but it's got orange or streaks in it, which I think I'll hold both of these aside and have a look at that. But I know that Gypsy Mermaid needed a fat half even at 32, which is why I tend to order a fat half from these Fabric of the Month clubs. And it's good because, you know, something like the little Nora Corbett Bewitching Pixie type things, I can actually fit 2 of those on a fat half, and so then I can get some coordination going. In fact, I think I will have to order another piece of, which one of Leslie's did I do the Electra on? Whichever, it was a lovely dark brown of Leslie's that I did the Electra on. I'll have to go look it up, and I think I'm just going to have to go specifically order probably a couple more pieces of that one because it was awesome, and I want to do a couple of the Bewitching Pixies on that one. Anyway, so I think that's it for me for this. Let's assume it's going to be a month again. If it's not, bonus. I'll maybe try and get that bead conversion. Oh, actually, thinking those sort of conversions, I did do write up the conversion I did on the Enchantress mermaid. So if anybody is interested in the details and what I swapped out for that, I will post a link below in the description so that you can go see, for the most part, what beads and treasure braid I actually did swap out for the called for. There is one that I couldn't find the listing again for one of the treasure type beads. So, like I said, I wing it. I ordered 2 colors that were close and we called it good. So, it works, guys. Just wing it. It'll work. So, I think that's enough dribble for me. I will see you guys in a month or so.